what we enjoy, what tastes good, easy to prepare, and all those kind of things. Oh,
That was me.
oh, okay.
Before you use it, that's okay. I'll put some on our last.
Sure. That's fine. It's not the video of me, at least, so, right?
Nope, nope, nope.
Okay. So what would be the recommended nutrient breakdown? So if you think about carb, protein, fat, where should each of those be? Yeah, there's a range, and yeah, and what I'm going to have on here is just a general, but above or below that is fine too. So what about protein and fat? So 14 for protein, and then fat would be the rest of it. So yeah, on average, 15 to 20% protein, a good amount carbs. Some, especially someone with diabetes, they might go down to 40%. There are some people that just do feel better with a little more protein, less carbs. And so I don't really recommend going much below 40, especially if someone is an athlete. You need that energy. And then the fat is going to vary 20 to 30%. We'll kind of fill in the gap. So there's no, and I don't know on your test if there's even a question specific to this, but just to give you kind of the general, there's no exact, it just depends on the group too, who you're referring to as far as kind of this percentage. For protein, for someone who's not an athlete, it would actually be like 0.8 to 1 gram per kilo. Someone who's an athlete, then we might be looking at more like 1.2 to 1.7. So, it's going to vary. Most people, especially if they're making an emphasis on protein, are eating okay and don't need all the shakes and expensive stuff. I find some people spend way too much money on extra protein and really don't need it. But we do need it for that muscle sparing and just recovery after any kind of muscle building exercises, even just nails and hair. I have a student I've worked with who has an eating disorder, and she even asked me, is this related to why I'm losing so much hair? Yes. When we aren't eating enough, we will lose. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons we could lose hair. It could be even medications or stress or other things like that. But also just lack of nourishment could lead to hair loss. And then, of course, our immunity. We've all lived through COVID and all this. And so if we eat well, we have better immunity and can help us fight off things like that. So as far as the protein, it's really ideal if we get that throughout the day rather than all at one time or one main meal. And especially as you work with people who are older, even some students will eat one big meal a day, but I'll have, depending on their work shift and things like that, they'll eat kind of one big main meal and then a bunch of snacks. Their snacks aren't necessarily really good sources of protein. So they might be lacking in protein for one, but then they're just getting most of their protein at one time. So they might eat a huge amount of meat. Well, that's not as ideal, especially say if they are trying to build muscle or heal a wound or something like that. Our body really utilizes it better if it's throughout the day rather than all at one time. And then, of course, refueling protein. We want protein before, not too close before, but before and after that exercise for that refueling rather than just carbohydrates. All right, so how much protein could be utilized for muscle building at one time? Like how many grams? And it's not an exact number, kind of approximate. Like at a meal, let's say. So not like in a day, but like if someone's trying to like just do all this, they're going to grab a core power and they're getting steak tonight and they're going to do this and that. And do they really need all that protein? Or really what would be optimal for some muscle building or recovery? 30 would be the max. So like, yeah, no, not per kilo, but yeah, no, that's all right. So yeah, 20 to 30 grams could be utilized like every 3 to 4 hours. And so, yeah, when I start seeing students wasting money on these protein shakes and all this other stuff, you don't really need it, especially if you have a meal plan and you're going to the calf, buy some protein there. Now, if it's something quick for recovery and then you're going to eat a few hours later, yeah, then that's where like a core power can come in handy, or, different protein shakes. But we don't definitely need to do a whole bunch of all at once. It's better to space it out. And excess is just calories. So especially if it's someone who doesn't really need to gain weight, it's just going to potentially lead to weight gain versus the muscle building benefit. Now, when we think about activity, so like if they're in a sport or they're doing a big workout, we wouldn't want lots of protein right before that workout, because when you think about digestion, especially we're using the big muscles, blood flow is going to go away from the stomach and out to those muscles, and now that food's just going to sit there. And protein does take longer. That takes even the longest to digest. So that's where we don't want to pump a bunch of fat and protein real close to, like a football game or a long run or something like that, because they're not going to feel very good. But if we could do a few hours ahead, it has time to process, then they're going to have that energy and they should feel fine. Now, there's the rare case where has everyone heard of gastroparesis? So it's not very common. You probably won't meet that many people in your career, but it's a disorder of slow digestion. So then that's going to do everything. And what would take us 2 hours to get through the stomach could take them 8. And so then we really want to think things through even more. And then that would be a good time to pull in a dietitian to help, because there's lots of things to think about with that. So when we're exercising, protein supplies 10% of the fuel. If we don't have enough protein stores, but if we're adequately fueled, it's only 5%. So the moral of that story is, if someone's not eating enough, even if they load up on protein, if they're not getting enough calories, they're going to take from their muscle. So they're not going to build. And I'll have students say, I'm just not, I'm trying to build muscle and I'm not. And then we start looking at what they're eating, and it's a salad for lunch with nothing on it, a small, granola bar for breakfast, nothing before their practice. And then they try to make up for it at supper. Well, they're not going to build muscle when their day is so deficient and they're not getting enough calories. And so, that's definitely something to think about. And then again, like we've talked, all these bodybuilding trends where there's massive amount of protein shakes and things. I have an 11th grader football player, lacrosse player in my house, and I finally have given up, but there's a jar of protein gainer in his room. They're like, whatever, dude, it's your money. You won't listen to me because I don't know anything. I'm not spending my money on this. Yeah, sometimes you just give up. But especially younger people, if you work with like high school athletes, and I'm sure you see with college athletes, they get sucked into all that, and a lot of it is just a big waste of money. So when we think about carbohydrate, it is our main source of energy. And in my time here, I've met a lot of students who are almost afraid of carbs. I mean, it's not a full eating disorder, but whatever gets out there. Have you worked with students that seem to be afraid of carbs? Yeah. More in high school? Okay. And some of mine might have been more first years that, they're still kind of in the high school mentality. And, as I work with students here, I can think of some gymnasts and, all kinds of different sports, and get them eating some more carbohydrate in their day. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have so much more energy. I can make it through my practice and not feel like I'm going to pass out, or not necessarily even pass out. But, and so sometimes it's getting past all those myths and all that, and just helping them understand that they do need it and it's not bad. I think it equate, they think carbs, I'm going to blow up and gain a ton of weight. Well, we might gain a little water because it's carried by water. They're going to lose weight fast if they cut out a bunch of carbs, but it's just a water gain, and it's not going to cause, it's a calorie thing. It's not just carbs. But our brain prefers carbohydrates. So you might all notice if you have a low carb day, it might be harder to concentrate in class because your body needs some carbohydrate. As far as maintaining blood glucose, especially someone with diabetes and depending on their medications, we really don't want them cutting out carbohydrate too much. And I can share a patient story when we get to the diabetes section, because it's crazy how low of a blood sugar they'll drive with, and it's as dangerous as drunk driving. It's scary, so we don't want to encourage that. And we think about our muscles, they're like a sponge, and so they soak up the energy from glucose, from carbohydrate, and then that's stored. So of course, like the long distance runners and athletes like that are especially going to want more carbohydrate to fill their glycogen stores and have more energy to rely on when they are doing their event. So what would be the best sources of carbohydrates? Whole grains, yeah. Anything else? What else gives us carbohydrates?
Bread or pasta.
Rice, pasta, fruits and vegetables, exactly, even milk. So depending on how soon before, milk may or may not be ideal, but that can be source of carb and protein, so it can be all in one. Do you guys still have the milk machine here in Lund? Like wasn't there a Fairlife machine? Okay, maybe it'll come back, because that was kind of nice. To just, they could buy chocolate milk instead of other stuff. All right, so yeah, whole grains definitely. You know, and even here in the cafeteria, there's a lot of students that realize they can even buy a whole grain pasta at the pizzeria. They have to request it though, it's not just in a dish. But there's a lot of whole grains, brown rice, you know, all those kinds of things. But the whole grains will help regulate appetite. So if it is someone who is, you know, with diabetes or trying to maintain or manage weight, the whole grains will slow digestion a little bit, keep them more full. It helps with lowering cholesterol. And so the more we can encourage people to eat more of those whole grains, it's almost like a drug in itself, not fully, but again, it is more slowly digested. So we don't want whole grains within an hour of practice, probably, because then that might not feel so good. So when would less complex or less whole grain be recommended or preferred? So, yeah, depending. If you're gonna not eat for a while, then actually whole grain might be better because it would stick with you longer. Yeah, right before working out. If you need quick sugar, then, you know, or someone with a low blood sugar, we wouldn't necessarily want to give them a whole grain. We'd want to give a fruit snack or something really quick. Yeah, and so they're not always the best thing, but more often than not, they're the best thing. And then fats. So fats, like we said, you know, around 25–30% of our calories. And the healthier that we can choose, the better. The nuts, the oils, the avocado, that's going to be healthier than, say, the butters and the higher fat meats and foods like that. And we do need them for metabolizing vitamins A, D, E, and K. So if we don't have enough fat in our diet, we could be deficient in those. Especially around here, vitamin D deficiency can be very common. Does anyone take a vitamin D supplement? Good, because most of us probably should, especially if we're indoors most of the time. We're not getting the sunshine that we need to have it enough of a level. And it's just, if you're ever curious, if you are deficient, it's just a blood test that they can take. Otherwise, taking just a standard amount like you can get from Sam's Club or something is fine. But yeah, besides the vitamins though, it's just another source of energy. So if someone is running out of energy, they could also be lacking in the fats in their diet besides carbs and protein. Are you guys familiar with the athlete plate? So it's like the My Plate, but it's focused on athletes. And this is through the Team USA sports dietitians. So, or the Olympic group, but it's still very general to, you know, sports in general. And so they have a few different versions. They've got more of your easy training, weight management, and then they have the hard training. And so you can see the amount of carbohydrate is much greater in the hard training versus the easy kind of between sport version. but it's just using all of our same food groups like the My Plate and just a little more sport specific. So that can be a good resource. And then we think about meal frequency, and I've kind of touched on that a little bit as we've been talking, but that's, I think, the biggest thing that I find with the athletes I've worked with, or even non-athletes, is just how often they're eating, if they're skipping meals, especially if they're trying to, whether it's gain weight or lose weight, eating, skipping meals is going to make it harder. It's one source of calories that we're not capturing. It could affect their metabolism, so they're not maybe burning calories as quickly. And it's not that people need to eat 6 times a day. For an athlete, they might need to eat 5 or 6 times a day. Someone who's recovering from an eating disorder probably needs to eat 6 times a day just to get enough of the calories. And what's interesting is the amount of calories someone who is very undernourished, they actually need even more than we would fathom because of the catabolic state they're in. And so they feel like they're eating more and should be gaining weight. They're still not, because they need so much more calories than what they're even eating. And so that's something to consider too, that, the situation. But ideally every 2 to 4 hours, depending on, again, their activity level, is, minimum every 5 hours is what I would tell patients. As far as working out, at least no more than an hour after working out, we would want them to replenish carbs and protein, but even 15 to 30 minutes would be fine, but up to an hour would be fine to still capture that. And then, again, how we distribute that. Are they skipping meals? Are they eating it mostly all in the evening? On the bottom, kind of interesting. So again, if they're starving, if they're not eating enough calories, they're going to lose 50% muscle. And so if someone is actually trying to build muscle, they're just going to be spinning in circles. And then 20% water, 30% fat. So if they're eating enough calories, that ratio will change. So it's critical that they're eating enough. I lead a diabetes prevention program at River's Edge. And so the goal is weight loss. We're helping people lose weight, move more. So their goal is the 150 minutes a week activity, the general public kind of recommendation. But we'll have some that are overzealous and they count calories and fat grams and they log with their food. And I'll have some that are like 700-800 calories a day. And it's like, no, I know you're excited and you've seen some weight loss and you want to do this, and people kind of get gung ho, and it might work for a short bit, but then it's going to affect their metabolism. They're going to start losing muscle, and now it's backfiring. And so definitely be careful with people. If they're very motivated, they might be too motivated and cut things too much, and then it kind of goes against what they're trying to do. So if we're thinking about before practice, training, game, that type of thing, what would be ideal foods to eat? So if we're looking in like that hour kind of time frame. Simple carbs, like any examples? Yeah, if it doesn't have like Alfredo on it, or if it just had red sauce, depending if you have reflux or anything like that. But it could have a little bit of butter, but I wouldn't do a lot just because then the fat. But yeah, pasta, basic pasta, rice. What other kind of simple carbs? Yeah, a basic granola bar. I wouldn't do like one of those like protein builder ones that have 20 grams of protein, but like a Quaker Chewy, 100 calorie basic kind of thing. Well, and then has anyone noticed those things? The more protein they get, they're disgusting. Protein doesn't really taste that good in large quantities. And so then they have to add other stuff to make it palatable. Okay, so here's some ideas. And so Greek yogurt, especially if it's not, some of them are real high fat, but like your basic kind of Greek yogurts, low fat cottage cheese, if they're wanting, if it's at least an hour to 3 hours ahead, not right before, then like even oatmeal, apple and peanut butter, again, not real close because of the peanut butter and the fat, turkey and Swiss sandwich. So let's say they're going to be able to have a lunch, but not a snack before, then something a little hearty. would be okay. But again, the fiber and the fat is what we'd want to think about. Moderate protein. Then we really want to go to carbs, simpler carbs, really not much fat, no fiber. So then we can get into like a banana, those fig bars, even just like honey, raisins, the sports drinks can be something to utilize, but not. Yeah. Yep, the little fruit kind of squeezes. Most of those aren't going to have much fiber, they're for, kids and stuff. And yeah, so and that's portable. You don't need refrigeration, so especially if you're traveling, that can be good. Or for someone, if we're treating someone's low blood sugar, that's also something quick. Fruit snacks even. There was a promotion with Skittles, not that they're epitome of health or anything, but it had some football player, as a recovery or during exercise snack. Well, yeah, it's quick sugar. I mean, it could work, but I wouldn't have it all the time. And just beverages that have a little carbohydrate, but not too much. Too much can actually cause some indigestion. So Gatorade, I think Powerade is our product here, but Gatorade is actually better than Powerade because of that. But if someone's underfueled, they're feeling hungry mid-practice, they did not eat enough. If they're, feeling like they're not gaining the performance or improvement in performance like they think they should, if their quality of workout decreases as the week goes on, instead of feeling stronger, feeling sluggish, anything like that, they aren't eating enough and they need more before in the day rather than just right before. And that's where I'll find with students, it starts with breakfast. Breakfast is too skimpy, lunch is too skimpy. So they might try to have a snack an hour before. That can't make up for a crappy first half of the day. It can help a little, but long term, it's not going to help their performance. And then for the recovery, like we were saying, 15 to 60 minutes after we want to replenish with carbohydrate and protein. Here we can start adding more fat and we could do a little more fiber because they're done and digestion can kind of go, or blood flow can go back to digestion rather than the muscles. We also want to think about that hydration, and if they weigh themselves before and after just to see how much they're losing in sweat, then 16 to 24 ounces per pound. So it's going to be per person something a little different, but we'll talk about hydration a little more in a little bit. And then again, that quality protein. So 15 to 25 grams, again, not any more than 30. It's not necessary, and that's going to help in just muscle repair and building. If they're having multiple sessions, 2-a-days and things like that, then we want even a bigger recovery snack. And here's just some recovery snack ideas. Some of these, if it's going to be a snack and then supper later, then maybe it's the Gatorade and Cliff Bar, and then they have a full meal an hour or two later. Otherwise, they could just jump into a full meal right away. So either is fine. And then maybe they have a snack later. All right. And then, so carb loading, just have one slide on that. And I don't know if a lot of people are big into that now. There's not a lot of research, just having adequate fueling. I mean, if someone wants to have the big pasta feed the night before, I know in high schools, that's the big thing. They'll do pizza or pasta. It's not going to hurt them. It's not necessarily going to, my son's ski races in the winter, and they try to do a pizza thing the night before a big race. Highly doubt it made any difference in how fast he skied the next day. But, it's also camaraderie and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's more for endurance athletes than for like the other kind of athletes, but nothing that will make a huge difference, most likely. So hydration. So again, if there's more than 10% simple sugars, it might cause some indigestion. So, when I think about, if you had 12 ounces of water, 8 ounces will empty from your stomach within about 15 minutes. If it has more than 10% sugar, it's going to take a lot longer. And so then it's just sitting there jostling around. And so that's more where the indigestion, where Gatorade is less simple sugars. And so it doesn't necessarily slow stomach emptying. So just something to think about if someone is feeling nauseous or not well after or during workouts. They might be doing too much of those Powerade, Gatorade type things and just need some water. Oftentimes, people don't need as much of the Gatorade as they think, and more water is sufficient. So what would be signs of dehydration? Thirst. We definitely don't want to teach people to wait till you're thirsty to drink, right? But thirst, definitely. If we're thirsty, then we definitely need more fluids. What else might happen? Dry mouth, dizziness, muscle cramps, headache. What was that? Oh, I didn't hear. They might even get a little loopy, like especially elderly people that come in with a urinary tract infection, dehydration. They are out of their minds. It's actually kind of crazy how in the elderly, how dehydration, they're like a whole different person sometimes. The family will be like, this is not his norm. And then he gets hydrated, some antibiotics, and you're like, oh my goodness, 2 days later, it is a different person. So depending on the person, it can make a big difference. So yeah, muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting. So if someone's feeling nauseous, it might be actually related to hydration, or that they had too much sugar in their stomach. Yeah, the headaches, the dizziness, confusion, even irrational behavior, depending how dehydrated they are, just that chronic fatigue or lethargy. So, of course, drinking throughout the day rather than trying to cram it in right before the event. If they're sweating a lot, then we really don't want them on a low sodium diet unless they have heart issues, they're elderly, and those kinds of things. But sodium to help retain some of that fluid can be helpful too. And then when we think about the urine, it should look like lemonade, not like apple juice. So sometimes it feels weird to get personal like that with people. You'll get over it as you work with people. But it's a nice analogy, and people know what both look like, and they can relate to, oh yeah, my urine is dark like apple juice. Okay, maybe I better drink more. And then that might resonate, and they might think about that. And then calories. We've talked a little bit about, we need adequate calories so people have the energy to build muscle, to do what they're trying to do. If they're trying to gain muscle mass, if they're not eating enough calories, it's not going to happen. If someone's trying to gain weight, if we get them to add like 500 calories a day, they might gain about a pound a week. Again, depending on their metabolism. On the reverse, if someone's trying to lose weight, cutting back by about 500 calories could be a pound or so a week weight loss. But, medications, metabolism, all that factors. So it's not, absolute, just kind of an average. And then these are just some other snack ideas as far as that carb protein combination, especially if they're, traveling, then things like trail mix, not necessarily right before, but that could be a good after. Again, the low-fat chocolate milk, probably one of the best just post-workout snacks, because 8 grams of protein per cup. Well, they're typically going to be, if you think about the red glasses, if an athlete went and got a red glass of chocolate milk, 8 times 3, they're getting 24 grams of protein, because that's 3 cups plus plenty of carbohydrate with the chocolate milk. They don't need to buy anything else. Chocolate milk is going to be way cheaper than buying the core powers, and they're getting as much protein. So we don't have to spend money. What is the core power? $5-6 a bottle? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, and the volume you're getting, you get a lot more for your money with just a glass of chocolate milk.
Is there do you know the difference in the protein percentage from 2% milk, 1% milk?
It's going to be about the same. So it's just the fat that varies, and then that decreases the calories. The carb and protein will just slightly increase the lower the fat, but it's not much. So it's, no matter what, it's about 8 grams per cup. Something like Fairlife milk is ultra filtered and there's less carbs, so then that does, I think that might, just the standard is like 12 per serving versus 8. So that can help give a little bit more protein, but just standard cow's milk would be about 8 grams per cup. Yeah. All right, vegetarian athletes. And we have a fair amount here. Some of you might be vegetarian as well. And so, you know, of course, the protein is one of the big things we want to think about because their options are going to be limited. So lacto-ovo, that would mean that they exclude meat, poultry, fish, but they do include eggs and dairy. And then just lacto, they do the dairy, but no eggs or meat or fish. Then there's like pescatarian, which they include fish. There's flexitarian. And sometimes I'll tell students, you know, I think they feel like, oh, I've said I'm vegetarian, so I can't ever be seen eating meat. And it's okay. You know, if you have a hankering for meat, even though you're trying to mostly not eat meat, it's okay if you have some meat. And so I think sometimes we get locked into these titles. And so flexitarian is a way to look at it. Sometimes they eat meat, sometimes they don't. And that's okay too. But yeah, if we make drastic changes to our diet and then we drastically go the other way. I had one student I worked with who had been vegan and decided, you know what, I don't feel good. I do feel better when I have meat. Her digestion, it took a bit to get used to that because it adapted and was used to not having meat and then adding the meat back. So she had to kind of gradually add it back in just to not feel so sick. And then vegan, of course, is no animal product. They might not even do honey. And so I've had some students say, you have this listed as vegan, but it has honey in it, or, you know, that kind of thing. And some vegans will eat honey, some don't. So it just depends. Some might not even wear a leather belt or leather shoes. It might encompass all kinds of things. But they do have, the more restrictive we are, the more risk we have for nutrient deficiencies. And so that's something to consider, that if they are lacking in energy or, you know, they're breaking bones or things like that, you want them to see their doctor because they might need to get some labs taken. So what would be some good protein sources for a vegetarian athlete? Nuts? I heard something over there. Maybe? Nope. Okay. Beans? Tofu is really good. Here we have a lot of that
Chickpeas.
Gardein. Has anyone ever had the Gardein, like the vegan chicken? Yeah, it's decent. It's as much protein as chicken. So it's a good alternative. How about like the milks? Would it matter if they did almond milk or soy milk or coconut milk? What do you think? Actually, no. Soy is the only one that's considered an equivalent to cow's milk. Soy has 7 grams of protein per cup, where cows is 8. The rest are lucky if they have 1 gram. So you would think with the name almond milk, it's made from a nut, that's lots of protein, but however they make it. So that's something to consider too. If someone's trying to get more protein in their diet and they're using oat milk or almond milk or coconut milk, they're not going to be getting as much protein. And so if they're willing to do soy, that is a better alternative than the almond. Now, if they're getting plenty of protein elsewhere, then they can, you know, make up for it. But if they're not, then that might make a difference. So here's just some. So the tofu for ½ a cup, 20 grams of protein, that would be like a chicken breast. Same with like the Gardein, like a Gardein breast is about 21 grams of protein. A lot of, like on the vegan line, a lot of those like veggie burgers only have like 10, 11. So they're okay, but they're not like a full meat replacement. So you've got to add other things to the meal to get enough. Peanut butter, about 8 grams and 2 tablespoons, but that's a fair amount to get the 8 grams. But beans, legumes, so trying to add those. What's hard is when they're picky and they don't like beans, and I'm not not sure what they live on because they want to be vegan, but then they don't like a lot of the vegan protein options. It gets very hard. And so when we think about an athlete who's vegetarian, you know, again, eating small, more frequent meals, especially, they're probably getting more fiber, so they might fill up a little faster if they are. Not all vegans are great fruit and vegetable eaters, but ideally they would be eating more of those in place. Plenty of water, and then again, trying to get at least half their calories from carbs so that they're getting that energy, and still getting a supply of fat. So if they're vegan, they're not going to use butter, but they could use, like, you know, olive oil or a non-dairy based, like margarine or something like that. And then also looking for fortified foods. So like an orange juice that's vitamin fortified, making sure, like, most non-dairy milks are fortified, but not 100% are. So they could be not getting the calcium that they would have been getting either. So some things to consider. So what nutrients would they potentially be more at risk to be deficient in if they're let's say vegan, especially? Iron, vitamin D, zinc. Yep. And what could happen if someone doesn't have enough zinc? They actually lose your taste. Could be a sign. So if someone, now COVID makes that all skewed because we'd never heard of loss of taste, you know, with anything before COVID. But yeah, that could be. Actually, I met with someone today, and I'm like, you haven't had taste in way before COVID was around. I don't even know if this person ever had COVID. And I'm like, you might want to see a doctor and get that tested, because you don't want to ignore the fact that you used to taste and now you don't, and you haven't gotten it back. So it's, you know, beyond any of us to figure out. A doctor needs to do that, but do lab work and stuff. So yeah, so iron for sure, because if they're not getting the animal foods. Then the other thing is some of the components of the veggies actually make iron harder to absorb, kind of compete. We don't want to take calcium and iron at the same time. They compete against each other. So if they're taking supplements, we'd want to do calcium like in the morning, iron at night, because otherwise you're just kind of wasting your money. Vitamin C will help iron absorb better. So taking a vitamin C supplement with iron can help that be more better absorbed. B12 definitely is one they could be deficient in, because that only comes in animal foods. So, you know, if they take a multivitamin, that would give them that. They could do like the nutritional yeast, which they do have that. I think it's by the salad bar. It's just like a brown, it adds flavor to foods. I mean, a lot of students like it just to add some flavor, but it is a way to get some B12 in their diet. And then the zinc is more the soy products, the nuts, the seeds, whole grains, legumes. And then getting into the fad diets, and, you know, and I think we're still stuck in the keto craze is probably the biggest fad. Any other fads that you guys hear about? No?
Paleo.
Big one, yeah. And so, you know, it's the quick fix. It's amazing what people are willing to do that when, you know, they really won't be able to do it long term, but this is going to be it. This is going to help me, you know, lose my weight or get better perform in whatever competition. And, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, the old adage, it is. And people will spend a ton of money on different things, promises and all that. And so definitely encouraging people to just really think about, okay, the basics is what works. Just moving your body more and looking at what your portions are and cutting back. That's typically all we need to do. Gluten-free is the other thing that, oh my gosh, the amount of people I meet that feel like they can't eat gluten. The only people that cannot eat it are those with celiac, which is an actual allergy to the gluten, the protein in wheat. There are people that have an intolerance. It doesn't mean they can't eat a speck of it, but like with irritable bowel, they're finding that not even everyone with irritable bowel, it's a small percentage that have irritable bowel, that wheat might be their harder to digest component. And it's actually probably the fructan, the starch in the wheat, not the protein. But when you think about all these gluten-free products, they're not necessarily healthy. They're not whole grain. They're not necessarily high fiber. They're super processed. And there's no magic bullet that a gluten-free diet is going to help someone lose weight if that's why they're trying to do it, because they could still out eat the garbagey gluten-free stuff. So, you know, it's false promises. And then they might be lacking nutrients. So they're, you know, if they're just doing all this gluten-free stuff just for no reason, they might be not getting as many fruits and vegetables. Depending on what they like or don't like, they might be lacking fiber if they're especially not getting the whole grains. And that includes then protein and different vitamins and minerals. So it's not something I recommend for the general public to do. Someone with celiac, you know, so if someone is having weight loss and abdominal pain, bloating, you know, it could be irritable bowel, but I do err on recommending go get a blood test, make sure you don't have celiac before you even start changing your diet. Because if someone is wanting to go gluten-free and they're not sure if they have celiac, if they go gluten-free and then get tested, it's going to be a false negative, because the test is looking for that reaction in your body. Well, if you've cut out that irritant, they're going to waste their time, and then they're still spinning their wheels because they don't know what they really have. So I always encourage, just get tested before you make any drastic diet change, because they might miss out on a diagnosis rather than fixing something. Like we said, the keto is a big one, and it's heavy in the meats. True keto is mostly fat and some meat and very little carb, and most people can't follow it. You know, it was initially created for managing seizures, so there is a small subset of people who it's needed, and it actually helps them manage their seizures. But for the rest of us, it's not necessarily great for our cholesterol levels. Some people will lose weight just because they've eliminated so much else, and especially if they're not eating enough calories. But again, it's not ideal. All right, eating disorders. Yes. No, you know, I don't know how they even came about that was like a fix. And I think it's only a certain type of seizure. It's not like all seizures. I can't really say for sure, but it's not because of their diet, but it's for some reason what then being in ketosis does in their brain function. Yeah, so I wouldn't want anyone to be afraid of having seizures because they eat a higher carbohydrate diet. It's more just that small subset that it could help if they do have that. And it's probably more of like a genetic situation on the seizures than anything that caused them. So eating disorders, definitely something you might have dealt with that here with students you've worked with, or because you have like hands-on practice where you're out in the community elsewhere, oh yeah, high school for sure. That can be a prime place where it kind of kicks in. And so when we think normal eating, and I think what's so hard with people with eating disorders, it's like they've lost sight of what normal eating is. It's all they think about is, you know, either not eating more than they should, or I don't know. It's too much of a focus. And I had one student say, I just wish I could just go up in the calf and not even think about what I'm going to get and just get whatever sounds good. And it's such a hard thing to think about if we've not struggled with that to just go get something that tastes good and go eat it and not think anything of it. But someone with an eating disorder, it's like consuming their mind all the time. But yeah, portions are moderate. It's not excessive all the time or too little. They're eating a variety of food if we're normal eating. We're eating response to hunger. I mean, sometimes we have to go by the clock because that's when our class schedule is, but overall normal eating would be based on our hunger. Not feeling like you can't eat with people and that you have to hide, and eating, you know, at least three times a day. So here's kind of a continuum. So there's that normal meat eating in the middle, and then the eating disorders can go on either side. So we might have more of the restricting, like the anorexia, where it's rigid rules, and they might have they refer to as safe foods. So foods that, you know, however they've determined are safe for them, and then that helps them exclude all these other foods that they shouldn't eat. You know, and it's just more of that obsession that they're thriving on not eating enough, and then, you know, food is punitive, where binge eating gets more into the overeating, but then, you know, it could even be binging and purging, where they might exercise more or vomit if they've overate. But it also is just that feeling of out of control either way. And really, you know, no one's ever figured out exactly. There is maybe more with anxiety. There could be a trigger. There could be some genetics, and then something happens, a stressor in their life or anxiety or something, and then boom, it kind of crops up. But people I've worked with, it's not that they necessarily can say, oh yeah, because of this, I got an eating disorder. It might have evolved over time. Sometimes it could be something someone said, but there was already things in the background that were kind of in their mind. But so signs of an eating disorder, can you think of, if you were working with a client, what would be some kind of red flags that you might be concerned that they should be like referred?
It might, like, pull themselves away from social events that non-food.
Yeah. They're always busy when it's a potluck or whatever it might be. Yeah. Just, or always talking about weight and calories and exactly. Short amount of time. And they might even try to disguise it with like baggier clothes, but you might notice, yeah, a rapid weight loss could be a red flag. Are you getting enough? Especially if it's an athlete, then we start worrying about injuries and, you know, all those things on top of it. So yeah, there's restrictive, unusual rules around food. Sadly, sometimes vegetarianism is you know, it's not that, I'm not saying everyone with an eating disorder is vegetarian, or, you know, but there is a high amount of the eating disorders I've worked with that vegetarianism was kind of their excuse to eliminate a lot of calories, and it's legitimate. So then, you know, no one questions, but then as you start looking at it further, so just kind of a red flag. Again, not that everyone that's vegetarian has an eating disorder by any means, but it can be one of those things that kind of coincides. Yeah, they don't eat in front of other people. They might collect a lot of recipes and cook food for everyone else, and then they never eat it. So they're like pushing it on everyone else, but won't ever eat the calories. Or it could be the opposite, where maybe there's some binging and food is missing, but no one ever sees them eating. You know, again, avoiding people that hyper focus on their body shape, and then, you know, changing their clothes, that they're maybe wearing really baggy things that kind of conceal how much weight they've lost. So, oh yes. So they're picking. I sadly have a friend of the family who I don't think she's ever gotten treatment, but it's almost painful to sit by her eating, because there's always something wrong with the food, and it's cutting it up and it's playing with it, but in the end, like, nothing ever got eaten. But then she'll brag about how many calories she you know, I can eat this Alfredo and I don't ever gain weight, but then she really didn't eat it. And so yeah, things like that. But the hard part is then trying to talk to them, like, especially if it's a friend, and to get help. That's the hard part. So this is a extremely old video. It was a PBS special. So I'm going to, okay, Abigail, bear with us. I'm going to try to stop sharing this and move to the video. Let's see if it is not showing. Okay. So I picked this. but it's not on the screen.
Oh, yeah, so if you have it, if you can drag it over.
Let's see.
I can see the video.
Just take that one and just pull it all the way over to the right. And pop on that screen. It's kind of a goofy setup in this classroom.
Oh,
Sorry about
wow.
that.
All righty then. That's the first time. Abigail, can you still see where it shows a video, like a YouTube?
I can't see it anymore.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, sorry. Was that a yes? Sorry. Yeah. Abby, can you see the screen?
That shows a YouTube video? I don't have it playing yet.
No, I'm not seeing that, unfortunately.
Okay, so we'll try this again here. Okay, so we're gonna start share screen. Do we want screen 2? Because there it is there too. Well, we'll see. Okay, now do you see a YouTube?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. Oh. Here's the issue. I can't. Oh, there it is. Okay, we're gonna make it bigger first. Oh, I'm gonna need to turn this up though, right? How loud that is. All right, so again, this is very old, probably from the 80s, but the point, we'll talk about the point at the end, but.
Lena Milano has also been a heavy emotional client. A gifted dancer, she was told to lose weight at age 12. I remember having a teacher come up to me and pinch my back, pinch the skin on my back, and say, "What is this? Are you drinking milk? You need to lose weight." Alina eliminated fat from her diet. In time, she became anorexic. Yeah, I was the happiest I'd ever been in my life. I was getting all the good parts and at school. I was getting all the attention. I was not being ignored anymore. When I was heavy, I was ignored instead of nurtured. And when I was really thin, all of a sudden nurtured and taking care of them, and the teachers who listened and take care about me. It was like I was only people. After starving herself over a year, Alina lost control and began to eat. Weight was, for me, the worst thing. I was just so ashamed of my body. I felt like I was the biggest failure and the biggest person, just the worst person. Picking up the knife in the kitchen and starting to cut on my arm, on my face. Looking at so much hatred and love towards myself, but feeling the pain and making real pain as far as being able to see blood and see the cuts. It was common. I did that for a long time. Despite her fragile state, Alina's talent did not go unnoticed. At age 17, she was invited to join the prestigious American Ballet Theater in New York. by Artistic Director Kevin McKenzie. But her struggle with weight would continue. There's that added pressure being on stage every day next to basic physical dancers. And I buckled under the pressure. I could not lose weight. It made me eat more because I got very depressed. I felt horrible about myself. The leader now faced one of the most difficult decisions of her life, whether to pursue her dream to be a professional dancer, no matter the personal cost. Erica Gluten made that decision many years ago, and now, at age 54, she lives with consequences.
You might have parents that age. I bet they don't look this old.
And severe osteoporosis. A former jockey ballet dancer, she is no stranger to extreme dieting practice. The scale becomes your altar. It becomes, it's like you pray every morning. You pray that it'll be down another pound or another ounce or anything to show that the work that you're doing and the work that's starving is working, because other things in your life aren't working. And it's the one thing you have control over, and that is a major thing. I think that's what keeps a lot of these people in this anorexic mode. It's control. Nobody else can control that for you. Described by a critic as the treasure of her generation, Erica stands in an era when anorexia was silent stress and all too easy to overlook. It really prefers my guilty that what has been taken away from my legs. And for somebody that always been very flexible, I'm very stiff. And it's only now that I know, it's only when you're paying for it. You're paying for it then, you see, that you don't know the cash register hasn't rung. It's ringing now. And it's not until it rings. It's like sleeping. You could have your alarm clock set, but it's not until it goes off that you're going to awaken. It's tendency to die. It's eating disorders. Eating disorders are too prevalent to ignore today. Dancers at the New York City Ballet attend a seminar on health issues. Anorexia and bulimia are rare among men, but increasing. I think women get more eating disorders than men because we have such a focus on our appearance. Although it's changing a little bit, men have to have the abs now with more muscle tone. But if you look at professions like jockeys, for example, or weightlifters, you'll often see a higher incidence of eating disorders because their careers are online based on weight. If you don't have normal periods, you don't have this increase of peak bone mass. For women, a loss of body fat from dieting or even strenuous exercise can shut down the production of the hormone estrogen, which is crucial to bone growth and menstruation. This is a total bone density scan of a healthy 25-year-old woman compared to a woman of the same age who has gone 5 years without menstruating. Nearly a third of mass is irretrievably lost. This woman in her 30s has gone 15 years without a period, transforming her bone into that of a 17-year-old woman. An expensive measure, the ballet offers its dancers bone density scans. Katie Tracy lost her period for nearly a year when she had anorexia. I'm right. Being a woman, being an athlete, I realized that I was susceptible to trauma. The potential for injury, potential for loss of reproductive abilities scared me. Dancers are at particular risk of developing osteoporosis because they do everything to exaggeration. they diet, keep their weight down, they are going to foods with fat in them. Unfortunately, a lot of foods with fat have calcium, and you get bones that are thin and fragile, essentially osteoporotic bone. It's pretty good. Getting help right away probably made all the difference for Katie. For women of 30, her bone scan is normal.
Okay. So typically, like say if someone's in an eating disorder program, they'll actually stop exercise and not allow them to exercise. For injury, just the calories they're burning, they can't maintain, what they're eating. Let me stop sharing. All right, let's see here. I'm gonna move this back over. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go.
The finish line comes
All right. Why can't I see it? There we go. Okay, perfect. And then X out of that to stop it. Okay, there we go. Now, can you see, Abigail, can you see the slideshow?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Oh, we can turn this down. All right. Now I need to get it back. Okay, hopefully we're back at it. So I'm going to skip through those. It's just more kind of basic information about the different eating disorders, but in the slide, did you already share it with them, or he's going to send you this whole slide set, so if it's helpful to refer back to. But the Triad is basically what the woman that they were looking at with the bone loss had. So when, and men wouldn't have the Triad, but men still could lose bone loss. But for women, if they're not eating enough calories and they don't have the periods, then the bone loss happens as well, and we can't replenish that. And so that's where it's really crucial to, we can't force someone. I mean, I guess a parent maybe could force someone depending on the age, but it's a tricky thing, but trying to encourage people to get help, because continue where they're at. We saw that woman, I'm going to be 51. I don't hopefully look that old. But I mean, it's very sad, 54 years old, and she looked like she was 70 or 80 years old. And that's horrible life, all because of an eating disorder. And so just to be aware of the impact, and so if an athlete, not that we talk periods with everyone, but it is something that if you're working with someone and now they aren't getting their period, that is a big red flag that there's under, amount of calories that for whatever activity they're doing. Now, granted, if they're on birth control and that's managing it, that's one thing, but even so, if they're on that, then it's hard to know. But if they stop getting it even on the birth control, then that's an even bigger red flag, because it should be forcing it. And so, I moved that business right in the middle of the screen, sorry. We'll put that back up, there we go. Okay, so that energy deficiency, it could be a lot of things. It could even be financial. They might not have an eating disorder, they might not have money for food. It's not that it's always an eating disorder, but it's definitely a red flag if they're losing weight because they aren't getting enough food. But maybe they're just training so much more and then just not realizing how much more they need to be eating. Again, less food availability. They're hyper healthy in their eating, and then that's made them be, end up almost being restrictive, or there could be eating disorder type behavior. So lots of reasons why someone might be deficient. It's not always just an eating disorder, but definitely something to be aware of. All right, and it's not going to advance. All right, well, let's see here. There we go. Okay, so and then there are, if you're in Minnesota, the Emily program and Melrose are your two main places. We don't have anyone like down here. A lot of them, especially now, thank you COVID, do telehealth. So for students or people that need that, they might be able to do it remotely and not have to go. But sometimes it's to the point where they actually have to go to an inpatient setting because they just can't do it on their own. You know, and it can be any age. It could even happen in someone older, all of a sudden, you know, for whatever reason, has an eating disorder. And it's a hard conversation. And like I said, I have my husband's friend's wife that it's not a conversation that's been able to be had. But it's worth trying to have if you can. So diabetes, before we kind of wrap up. So we'll talk about the types, kind of risk factors and some concerns with exercise and diabetes. So when we think about type 1 versus type 2, if we had 100 people, 5 to 10 would have type 1, the rest would have type 2. So they both have to do with blood sugar, but type 1 is an autoimmune situation where the body attacked itself, the beta cells of the pancreas, and it doesn't make insulin anymore. Sometimes when someone's diagnosed, it might be a very slow progression and they do make some for a while, but the pancreas eventually poops out. Type 2 diabetes is more of a lifestyle situation where there's genetics, but more often than not, they tend to have extra weight, maybe not as active, but not always. Other ethnicities like Asian, they have a higher risk of diabetes, and it's not because they're necessarily overweight, it's just in their genetics. So and like American Indian, what is it, Pima Indians, I think, if they live in Mexico and are eating their traditional diet, there's a low risk of diabetes. They come over to the States and eat our garbagey food, and it's like a 90% rate of diabetes. And so it's totally, in that case, diet related, you know, with genetics as well. But how sad, how much a diet change can make a big difference. And so the risk varies. So of course, carbohydrate is it. And so sometimes I think people get afraid of carbohydrates because of diabetes. It doesn't cause diabetes. If they ate too many calories and gained weight, that might cause or lead to diabetes, but it's not that carbs directly cause diabetes. In normal blood sugar, we would eat the food, break it down into glucose, goes to the bloodstream, and then the body would sense that, see the blood sugar rising, and it'll tell the pancreas to send out insulin. Think of it kind of like a car. So you have your gas tank and you have your engine. Your gas tank is like your bloodstream. You've got your sugar or your gas there, okay? You need to get the glucose into the cell or the engine. Insulin is like the fuel line. So we have to have insulin to get it from point A to point B. If we aren't making any insulin, like in type 1, we have to take it as an injection or they would die eventually. In type 2, it's not that they aren't making it, they're maybe not making it as well, or they're not utilizing it as well. And so lifestyle can make a much bigger help. And so if they can exercise, it actually, what's called insulin resistance. Are you familiar with that term? Exercise can totally, not fully reverse insulin resistance, but it can greatly improve it. And my husband actually has type 2 diabetes. He's had it, he's going to be 53. He's had it probably since his late 30s and finally has really embraced exercise the last 5 or so years, lost a bunch of weight and has really good blood sugar control. We can't make someone exercise. They have to decide it on their own, but the more we can encourage it, it's been his medicine. He still is on diabetes medicine, but he's not had to add insulin. He hasn't had to add more. So it definitely can make a difference. And, you know, exercise as medicine, I think, is still kind of a thing out there. And it's true. There's a lot of people who don't need additional medicine. I even met someone at the hospital last week, had knee surgery, and his chart said he has type 2 diabetes. He doesn't show any medicines. His A1C was really good. And he's like, yeah, no, I lost weight and I started exercising and my doctor says I don't have diabetes anymore. Well, they will always have diabetes. It's just managed. They quit exercising and gain weight, it's back. So, you know, it's a good hope that they don't have it. If they can keep what they're doing up, then they might, but, or I love when they'll say it's a touch of diabetes. No, you either have or you don't. It's kind of like being pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. You either have diabetes or you're not. But I think sometimes doctors don't want to give the bad news, or they're getting close, and so they'll try to motivate. You're not doing them any good, because if they really feel like they have it, maybe they would be motivated. Not always. I mean, it took my husband 10+ years to be motivated to actually change things, but better late than never, I guess. So in type 1, insulin is it. There are a few other drugs that are on the market, but pretty much they have to take insulin, whether it's injections and a pump, however they do it. Type 2, there's tons of pills, there's insulin, all kinds of things that they might take. So when we think about some of these diabetes pills, the thing to be aware of is like these, the sulfonylureas, these are the old cheap ones. So doctors like, especially with the way the healthcare system is going and how expensive things are, the problem is any of these drugs, they will help the body send out insulin all day long. So what happens if someone doesn't eat lunch? They took this at breakfast and they aren't eating again until supper. And they're coming to meet you at 1 o'clock to work out or something, or do something with exercise. What are we going to worry about?
Hypoglycemia.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Well, yeah, our phantom in the room. Yeah, hypoglycemia. And it's amazing how many patients have no idea that that's even a risk. And now you're dealing with a low blood sugar while you're trying to work with them. And so we want to, you know, it's another reason just try to eat every 4 to 5 hours, especially if they're on medications like this to help prevent it. I hate to feed a blood sugar. I mean, especially often they need to try to lose weight. So if they're always having low blood sugars, you want to recommend go back and see your doctor. You might need either a different medicine or something, because if we just keep feeding low blood sugars, they're just eating more calories and they might gain weight, and that's not really going to help their diabetes either. This is the most common drug that they will be on. Metformin, or Glucophage is the other name. It has a very low risk of low blood sugar, so it's great that way. Sometimes they might have tummy troubles. Initially, most people get used to it over time. Sometimes there are some combinations of this with either sulfonylurea or something else, so then that would be something to consider if it's a combo pill. But if it's just metformin, it's pretty safe and not really issues with exercise. Insulin, again, we need it. We need it to get that sugar into the cells and utilize the energy. So it's something that the patients absolutely have to have one way or another. And so with insulin, we have a lot of types. We have short acting, we have long acting. And so the thing to keep in mind is if someone's taking insulin, but not eating well, it's just like that sulfonylurea pill. So the story I have a woman I work with who is, well, she has a drug history. So it might have affected cognition a little bit. She's probably in her 60s, and she works at a gas station and is, she wants to really do well, but then her depression and mental health get in the way. And so we're trying to get her to take her insulin regularly. I mean, it like seems simple and basic, but she'll just get busy or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times that even the ambulances had to be called. So she finally got really good at taking her insulin every morning, but isn't always eating breakfast. Then she drives home, which it's like La Center from here. So country roads, I don't know how she hasn't gotten in an accident. And her blood sugar has been in the 40s when the ambulance, because someone, you know, she did get help. Right. And so it can be very dangerous when people, I mean, and I've been working with her for 8+ years. I mean, I can only explain so much. And the poor thing, but it's scary. And I mean, even out driving, then you don't even know who you're driving next to that might be having a low blood sugar. But if we add exercise onto this, if she was done trying to exercise, it could even make it lower. But her biggest thing is she's trying to be perfect at taking the insulin, but not eating her food. And so, you know, even asking someone, did you eat today? Did you take your medicine and eat? They might have done one and not the other. That might be part of why they're having blood sugar issues. So this is just more of a picture diagram. The black line would be the closest to what our body does when we eat, shoots up, the insulin spikes, and then within 4 hours, it's kind of out. It's even a little quicker what our own insulin. So these are what the, you know, manufactured. And then our body is always putting out a little insulin all the time. And so like the Glargine, the one that's a flat line, Lantus is the brand name. It's not exactly that flat, but it's trying to mimic that. And so someone might be on one of those long acting ones plus the short with each meal. So here's an example. The old fashioned insulin's regular insulin, it lasts even longer. And look at how much insulin is like there if then they have the MPH in between. And if they're not eating, there's a lot of insulin floating around. And if they're not eating, we can have not a great situation. Here's another. So this is using the shorter acting insulin. But again, they're taking it regularly, but not eating, we could have low blood sugar. So, you know, again, taking too much medication, skipping a meal, or exercising more than normal are all factors that could be at play if someone does have a low blood sugar. They might get sweaty, they might get irritable. So you might be working with someone and they're just all of a sudden getting snappy with you. And if you know they have diabetes, I would definitely check their blood sugar or have them check it. They might feel hunger, they might get woozy or, you know, shaky, that kind of thing. It's a whole gamut of what, it wouldn't necessarily be all of these. Some people just have one symptom or another, or they might have lots of them. So the best way is to not skip meals and really encourage them to carry their blood sugar meter with them. So they could test while they're working with you if there was an issue. Because it's hard to say if where you're at, anywhere you guys have worked, is there a meter, or does the person have to have their meter with them? Okay. So they bring their own, yeah. Oh, sure. Yep, so that helps. And then, yeah, making sure they're bringing along snack, or that you have a little supply just in a cupboard or something, little cans of juice or fruit snacks, so that you have quick sugar if someone would need it. So what would we give? So I kind of gave it away with the fruit snacks, but what would be some things that we would give if we needed to treat? Yeah, like that. Yeah, some simple carbohydrates. So what's funny is people will treat it with a candy bar because it's like they're, ooh, I get to have a candy bar. I had a low blood sugar. Worst thing we can have them take, unless that's the only thing available, the fat, the protein, especially like a Snickers, it's going to slow the sugar. We want quick. We want quick sugar. So like those glucose tablets, the other thing people will do is they'll take one. They need 3 or 4 of them to get the amount of sugar in a half a cup of juice. So if they only took one, it's not going to probably barely touch it. So ideally having them test 15 minutes after they did have the whatever source of carbohydrate, just to make sure it's coming up, because we don't want to especially send them out in a car. So like my friend from the center, and that wasn't leaving me, but that was when she left work. So if possible, have them test. If not, just have them take something, because it's safer to just give them a little extra sugar and make sure they're safe than risk, especially if they're going to be driving. Let them wait 15 minutes and then they can test it again. But yeah, regular soda would work, fruit snacks, basically 15 grams of carbohydrate, something that's pure sugar. There are like glucose gels, but they're a big tube and they need to eat the whole tube. Not too many people are really keen on that. So, and then with physical activity, especially if they're new to physical activity, encouraging them to bring their meter, test before and after, so they can see what their body does. We have cardiac rehab at River's Edge, and so that's what they'll do initially, is have them test before and after. And it's amazing. Some people have a 100-point drop in their blood sugar from before and after. Now, granted, they probably ate before, so it was up a little bit, but some people can have a big change. And so you want to be aware of that. All right. So last kind of things. And so when should we work together? And I send you, you send to me. I work with an exercise physiologist at River's Edge, and she teaches the diabetes prevention classes with me. So it's awesome because if they want more of an exercise prescription, okay, Nicole, it's out of my scope. I can tell them, you know, our guide, you know, the general guideline, 150 minutes a week is what's recommended, a combination of cardio and strength, but I'm not going to give them a prescription. It's not in my realm. And so we want to keep in mind kind of our realms. We've learned lots and we're excited to share our knowledge, but we also want to be careful that we're not outstepping. So, you know, if there's any other diseases going on, again, like with the blood sugars and stuff, we wouldn't want to jump into any kind of diet stuff. They have diabetes, heart disease. There's just so many medications we want to consider. Would it be considered a medical treatment? You know, is it involving interpreting blood tests, you know, like cholesterol and blood sugars? You know, are they needing more individual dietary help? Are they asking for a specific diet plan that would be, you know, calorie based? Are they wanting nutrition supplements? I myself don't even like to recommend, really. I like to put that on the doctor just because of any drug interactions. So we just really want to be careful with recommending supplements, especially like the nutritional supplements aren't monitored like drugs. And so we don't always know, you know, Amazon, you can get a lot on Amazon and who knows what it is, what's actually in there. So we want to be careful. Are they trying to manage, you know, their diabetes through diet or, you know, or heart disease? Could what we're recommending actually delay treatment? You know, and so we don't want to get in the way of, you know, so it's always good to just, you know, send them, have them refer back to their doctor. Or, I mean, I don't diagnose. So if it's something we're worried about a diagnosis, then don't send them to me either. Send them to the doctor. But if it's more diet-based, then send them to a dietitian. You know, could there be an unwanted interaction? Again, why I'm cautious on any kind of drugs. I will recommend like calcium supplement for students who are vegan and not getting, you know, calcium, but I'm not one to just jump into supplements or having people do that. So why does scope matter? Because there's licensure, and with athletic training, do you guys have any kind of licensure for your scope? And yeah, exactly. And so if we're breaching into other areas, we want to be careful because there is licensure. You know, and so within the scope of practice, like the plates, so even like the athlete's plate, the my plate, it's general basic nutrition that is totally within your scope to be, you know, showing as far as recommendations. Getting into calories and nitpicky kind of stuff, then we want to be cautious, especially if they have other kind of diseases. You know, just normal healthy diet, just the, you know, the essential vitamins and minerals and how nutrients act in our body. Avoiding deficiency is, you know, healthy snacks, things like that. You know, those are totally in scope. So I'm not at all saying you can't talk nutrition at all. We just want to be cautious, just like I don't give an exercise plan, but I'll generally recommend the benefits of physical activity. But then luckily I have an exercise physiologist. So say, well, if you want a plan, then go meet with Nicole and she can get you a plan. And if they want weight loss, she'll tell them, come make an appointment with Jen and she can sit down and you know, do that with you. So, but on campus, I am a free resource to students. So a lot of students don't realize that. We're out in the rest of the world. I don't even know what they charge for me. It's probably $200 an hour. I make nothing near that. But it's, you know, whatever they charge insurance, you know, in clinics, people will end up paying and not all insurances will cover. So if you're working with a student here that would benefit from meeting with me, it won't cost them anything. And there's no limit on how often they can see me. There is also, is everyone familiar with the website, the dining menu? And so this has information as far as allergies. Oh, it's not showing it on there. Well, dang it. But it'll show you ingredients. The new chef has made tons of great changes, but I am only part-time, and thus I don't have all those analyzed. So unfortunately for students with food allergies, there's less information available than there used to be, but by the fall, hopefully I'll have most of that done. But it is a way for them to see the daily menu and get, like, say if someone diabetes, get the carb information. So that is a good resource. The app won't give all the calorie information. The app is just a picture screenshot of the menu. Oh, let me see if I can, let me stop so you can actually see it. Shoot. All right, so stop share, and then let's see. There we go. Share screen, and let's see. And that did not work. Well, we'll just try moving that over. All right, so on the website, if you click, so, oh, shoot, okay. Stop share, and then, let's see. How did I do that again? Which one did I click on? Go in here. No. No, let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, now we got it. So let's say, like, get over there. There we go. So something I've analyzed, it'll actually have protein, calorie information, ingredients. If there's an allergen, it would actually say allergies, and then in bold, whatever, wheat or soy or whatever it is. So this is something that can be helpful for students, but like I said, with all the new recipes the chef has added, then a lot of them are going to just say under construction, unfortunately. But they can always, even if they have a question about ingredients, they can have students email me. But this is something that a lot of people, it's amazing. I've even talked to seniors who didn't even know this existed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of time it takes me to put all this on here. So anyways, questions? Okay.
So I used to work in a joint reconstruction clinic. And one of the things that we would often do with patients is actually work with them on optimization. Give out different knee replacement.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And often we can set goals for A1C, maybe below 7.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
If we could prevent infection.
Oh, I wish our hospital had that aggressive a goal.
Well, the crazy thing about it is we would oftentimes see people that would come in, they would, and the doctors would tell them they would recommend these really restricted diet practices. Patients to drop the A1C, right? But then we would see that ultimately right after surgery, when they would start eating again, that they would actually start to kind of creep back up, and sometimes they would start to have complications. So was it possible then that by maybe recommending something so strict,
Right.
they were bottoming out, just dumping glucose in the bloodstream because they were low?
Oh, possibly. And so A1C, does everyone know what an A1C is? So it's that like 3-month average. Someone without diabetes would be under 6.5. I mean, normal would be under 5.7. Sadly, I've seen surgeries done on someone that's a 9, where they're averaging 200 blood sugars. Not ideal, because sugar is going to get in the way of healing. And so yeah, to meet a goal, especially if they're keeping track of data and how great we are that we did all these surgeries with a great A1C. But yeah, if they're having horrible blood sugars after, it's not ideal. But yeah, I would love to see if we can have people under 7. but sometimes they just need it. They're in such bad pain.
Well, and the crazy thing about it, is that oftentimes they were in such pain, they couldn't exercise.
Right.
They were
And
very
so
sensitive.
yeah. And then, yeah, if they're so drastic in their dieting, the liver, so with that insulin resistance, metformin is trying to help shut the liver off from sending so much glycogen when they go a long time without eating. And if they're not on metformin, and then they're cutting too back, it can actually still make their blood sugar higher, even though they're cutting back. So, yeah, good question.
No other questions? This has been, I like, this has been great.
Oh, good. All right.
I'm like over here.
Good.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. No, gotta, well, and now do you want or you will probably have to have you log on if you're still doing class.
Yeah, I mean, we can stop sharing and I'll,
Okay.
I can shut this down. Abby, thanks. Hope Chicago is fun and I'm glad it's going well. You can't hear me.
On here probably. Okay. All right. Goodbye to Zoom. There we go. All right. Well, thank you all for participating. I initially I didn't have all those built-in questions and had a lot of sleepers, so I built that in to engage you a little bit. All right. So, all right, I gotta pull this. All right. Why won't it go?
Probably just stop your share.
Oh, I totally stopped Zoom. So, oh no, I didn't. It's still. Well, we'll just.
And then you can close that out. All right, and then we can.
All right.
I believe you talked to my hockey team.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
we're like, yeah. I just want to let you know, like, you helped the team out a lot with it.
I
Like, yeah,
did.
me personally and a few of my other
Good.
teammates.
I wasn't sure. I was
Yeah,
like,
no, we did.
I don't know
Yeah.
if this is,
No,
if they're bored with me. or
no, I
not.
know, some of them were, not gonna lie, but
Oh,
like,
okay.
no, you did help me. Like, I had some, really helped me like before pregame, you know, and all this. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
good, because I kind of left there going, I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, some of us took some.
Good. Awesome. All right. Okay, I think we're done, Abigail. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Have a
there
great
you are.
night.
Did you have any questions?
No, I don't, but thank
Okay.
you so much for
Okay.
presenting.
You are welcome. Have a good trip.
Thank you.
All right. Where is my, all right.
Yeah, I get equally frustrated. with
Well, and I hate, this is a touch screen, so then I'll touch it. And,
Look right back on the Zoom down there.
oh, I can't even find my cursor. Oh, it's way over there. That's why.
Yeah, sorry. Screen is super wonky.
Okay.
You just go left, it'll pop up on this monitor. Second. It's gonna line up.
Escape.
There you go. There it is.
Oh, it's still over there.
To the left. There it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay. There we go.